some in the chat, and we'll try to pick up as many as we can later on. I've just thought I'd kind of go through a few slides with you and take you on a bit of a journey. I know Tendayi is going to go into a bit more detail about that, but let me just share my screen with you guys at the moment. So I work through a company called Odyssey Wealth. We're a generalist IFA, independent financial advisor practice that we deal with a range of clients. And essentially what we do is take clients on a journey, from a place of very little knowledge or very little understanding, and trying to build a bit of a plan or a roadmap for them to kind of outline what milestones they need to kind of achieve in life to get to an end goal effectively. Whenever I do these talks, whether it's on Zoom is the new paradigm we're dealing with, or in person, I always kind of try to come up with a quote that kind of symbolizes or encapsulates the current times we're living in. And I thought this was quite inept, effectively a Mark Twain quote, and just kind of sums up what kind of times we're living in with everything that's going on, with COVID, with markets, with the new way of working, whether you kind of having to work from home, or we've had to go through personally a homeschooling exercise, which has been challenging to say the least. So I think if 2020 can be summed up, it's been a challenge, and I think it's been a challenge for pretty much everyone in England and around the world. But obviously, what we can do, and as humans, is kind of look to plan forward and turn the new page and a new chapter in moving forward. Effectively looking at the long term, and that's where we kind of help clients and want to give you guys a bit of an understanding today is what you can do. I don't know if any of you remember the old Nissan advert from the 90s, life is a journey, so enjoy the ride. And I think that encapsulates a very succinct message of we are on a journey, you guys are on a spiritual journey, and it's important to realize that alongside or parallel to your spiritual journey, you've got a life journey as well. And a key element of that journey is financial related, or and relates to financial planning. It's getting your first job, building up deposits to buy a house. Once you cross that milestone, it's building up some savings for a buffer. Then it's kind of looking at building up some savings for later life. And it all comes down to, are all your gears aligned in the right direction? Do you know where you're heading? Do you know where you want to get in the end? Life is such that it's always going to throw a curveball. The most recent one, I kind of chuckle, not to be kind of foolhardy, but people in Texas who kind of enjoy 30 degrees throughout the year have been suffering an unheard of catastrophe with temperatures dropping. So life's got a way of just throwing some curveballs, and it's up to us to kind of overcome those and deal with the challenges, and get back on your feet and carry on. So, what we do with clients in terms of building their journey is making sure they are set in the right direction. Do we have a goal in mind where we want to get to? What are the kind of road bumps or the bumps in the road that are likely to come ahead or come at some point? And what can we do to better prepare ourselves for this journey? And when we talk about financial planning, ultimately the journey is at the end of the day about retirement. It's getting to that end point where you've got the means to kind of hang up your boots and say, I want to kind of enjoy life. I don't want to have to get up at 6:30 every morning and cart myself off to the office or to the hospital or things like that, and have the freedom to do what you want. And that's essentially what the first kind of generally 60 years or 65 years of your life is trying to get into that position of building up to that point. Fortunately, we in the UK at the moment. I'm originally from South Africa. My dream was to retire back to Cape Town, but as you said, things change. Every time I kind of go back, I'm like, is this the place to retire to? Things are starting to look a bit haywire. So the retirement plans have to change. I'm probably going to be retiring in the UK somewhere. So essentially, it's up to yourselves to make your own provision. The state does have a pension in the UK, so Currently, if you're born after 1978, the state retirement age is going to be 68. If you're lucky, it's slightly earlier, 67, and the minimum age at the moment is 66. At the moment, it's quite a generous scheme. We always say the government's going to send you a check. It's just what you can buy for that check. And, if you're in Venezuela, you're still getting your social security grant, but you can buy a coffee with your pension. So it's all about, keeping things real and keeping things relevant and building up enough to be able to suffice and sustain you through that retirement. Currently, the state pension in the UK is £9,141 a year. It's £175 a week. It's going up slightly. It's going up to about £180 with inflation in April. But essentially, what we view that is, unless you're a couple, they've got two. Essentially, it's a good base, but it's not something you can rely on. If we look at what that can get you at the moment. Let me just move that so you can see. Household bills and food are pretty much going to swallow up 90% of your pension, if not 100%. And I've put £50 for travel and leisure and £25 for insurance and a bit of pocket money maybe. But essentially, your state pension is not going to sustain you long term in retirement unless you have other assets to fall back on. A lot of clients kind of early on say, we're going to retire back home and it's a lot cheaper to live. It's yes, absolutely. But you're still going to have costs involved, medical things like that is obviously a burden you don't have to take on in the UK. If you go back to Zimbabwe or go back home or Nigeria, South Africa, wherever you guys are from, suddenly medical becomes a massive percentage of that bill. So it's about planning and getting into the right frame of mind. Is there hope? Absolutely, and it's about planning and putting a logical kind of head on and saying, what steps do we need to take to be able to kind of build our plan and our roadmap. And there's various things people can do. Albert Einstein said compound interest is one of the seventh wonders of the world. Effectively, those who understand it earn it, and those who don't pay it. And from the graph, if you guys can see that, effectively, the blue line is your contributions, the dark blue line, the light blue line is your total payments, and the orange line is the impact of compound interest. Your investment returns at the end of the day, and that's what makes the real difference. I generally say to clients, early on in the journey, it's what's the quickest way or what's the easiest way to get to £1 million by age 67. And surprisingly, it's a very, very simple answer. When your child is born, start paying £25 a month into a pension. And if they get reasonable growth, 8.5%, they're likely by the age of 67, and obviously they'll have to take it on at some point, to have about £1 million pension fund. One of the simplest solutions, and I can bet your bottom dollar none of us do it. It's one of those kind of ideals that everyone kind of understands and does, but we don't actually fulfill and put it into practice. Partly it's maybe a selfish thing. We don't want to kind of give our kids too much of a leg up. We want them to earn it. But secondly, it's just, we caught in a rat race ourselves, and we're just trying to make sure, we're covering the mortgage, or we're covering the bills, we're covering our incidentals, compared to planning for our children's kind of 60 years time. What made the difference in terms of building up your plan and building up a buffer? It's, as I said, it's that interest, it's that ability for your money to grow when you're not at work. So you can work for 8 to 12 hours a day. When you're younger, you can pull probably 16, 17 hours a day, but effectively, you're going to get to a point where you can't sustain that. And ideally, what you want to get into a position is when your money's working for you 24 hours a day. Whether that's a kind of a buy-to-let property, whether that's you've built a business that, if you take a month off, it's working for you. But at the end of the day, one of the easiest ways to do that with the smallest outlay of capital is make use of investments and pensions. Obviously, they have a risk and they go up and down. If anyone tells you an investment is not going to go down, they're kind of lying to you, because investments, by their very nature, you have to buy something cheap and at a higher price, and you don't always get that right. but over the long term, you make sure you're in the positive territory. So just as a typical example, paying in £500 a month in a savings account over 20 years, you end up with an amount of 132,000. It's a lot of money, but effectively what could you have? And if you had a bit of growth, not astronomical growth, you can almost double that by just putting it into a pension, or an investment. A pension obviously gives you tax relief. The government kind of incentivizes you to save. They say to you, look, if you build up a cookie jar of stuff, every time you kind of don't put your hand in the cookie jar, you put a cookie in the jar, we're going to top it up with kind of a quarter cookie. So for £100 into a pension, the government tops it up by £25, or if you're a higher rate taxpayer, you get even more. So these are kind of various mechanisms you can use to, as I say, to build up your plan, to build up your kind of future security in terms of your retirement. And again, whether that's, if you're incredibly lucky, you've worked hard, that's at 50, whether that's at 55, whether it's at 60, you're going to get to a point where you mentally reach the point where you don't want to carry on working. You want to kind of start enjoying time with the grandkids, or start pottering around at home 4 or 5 days a week, as opposed to kind of getting Saturday a rest day and Sunday church and getting off that rat race. So there's various ways to get there. Obviously, such is life, and in the days of the internet, we get bombarded with various things. Clients phone us almost on a daily basis saying, oh, we've heard about this, we've heard about that, we can get 10% interest here, or is there a way of investing in this thing? And generally, what I say to you is, if the big banks aren't doing it, it's probably a scam. So it comes down to the age-old adage: there's no such thing as a free lunch. If money was free, they would be giving it away on the corners. So effectively, stick to the old tried and tested ways. Investments, pensions, buy-to-let properties and things like that. They've been around for years, and they just are grounded in empirical evidence in terms of being able to work for you. A typical example, I don't know if you guys follow the markets, a couple examples of things. Bitcoin is one of these things that we get asked on a weekly basis. Should we invest in Bitcoin? And I was asked this question at $1,000. I was asked this question at $10,000, and we're sitting at $54,000. And it's this case. The point is, what goes up is likely to come down when it goes up that quickly. When you look at, there was a recent one recently with GameStop. It's a company that sells kind of cartridges, basically secondhand computer games in America. Again, we had a share price going from $1 to kind of $4. It sat at $4 for years, and it went up to $500. And it's currently sitting at $40. And it's very easy for us as humans, it's kind of inherent in our nature to kind of, if we are on the sidelines, to look at this in almost an envious way. One of the sins is envy, and it's almost looking at it in an envious way, saying, I should have got on. But what we kind of almost discount internally is the people on the other side of the trade who kind of bought in at $500 and are now sitting at $40 and have lost almost everything. We don't seem to focus on that element, which is almost half the people made money and another half the people lost money. So it's very important for us to kind of realize that, we're always going to have these fads. We're always going to have these things that kind of shoot to the moon. And if you get them right, you're laughing. But the likelihood is, once you hear about them, once the mainstream media is on them, it's too late. And effectively, you've missed that boat. And that's why we always say to clients, just start with the basics. Start at the, paying in irregular amounts into investments, into pensions, building up that kind of pot, as opposed to try chase a pipe dream that the odds of kind of making it work are almost like the lottery. If you play the lottery, it's a 1 in 60 million or 150 million chance of winning it. The likelihood is it's just never ever going to happen. The likelihood of picking a winner like one of these kind of Bitcoins, buying Bitcoin at $1 or 36 cents, in 2014 is so unlikely to happen. It's just rather just focus on doing what you do, go to work, earn your money, and make sure it's working for you in a way, as opposed to try and buy lottery tickets and relying on that to pay for your retirement. Here's an example of just how things work, and this is the kind of how hard it is to pick winners. So this is just a snapshot of 2018, what different asset classes made money and lost money. You know, and you can just see if you started 2018 or even 2020 saying, I'm going to pick the winners, the likelihood is you kind of would have picked the wrong winner. And the difference between, you know, making money and losing money is you know, 21% spread. So what we generally say is, you know, just go for the tried and tested, spread your money around, make sure it's invested in a very diversified way. So if something does happen to a single asset class or things like that, you're not going to be affected in a massive way. And this kind of comes around to, you know, one's life journey as well. You know, I generally say to clients coming up to retirement, you know, we've been speeding along a highway in a car. You know, we've been building up money and building up assets and investments as quickly as possible, you know, within reason. But when we get to the latter stages of, you know, in your 50s and that, what we want to do is, you know, we want to kick it down a couple of gears. We don't want to be cruising along at 100 miles an hour. We want to be kind of cruising along at 60 miles an hour in the slow lane, making sure our assets are working for us, not losing money in terms of inflationary pressure, but also just making sure we're driving a car that's kind of got some seat belts. You know, we've got an airbag there. We've got a early warning braking system that, you know, if we're picking up things that are getting a bit rough, we can pull the risk back a bit. And it's all about, you know, building up, but also protecting what you do have. And you know, Tendayi, again, is a specialist with working with clients in making sure you got the right things early on in life. You know, the protection for your family, the critical illness cover and things like that. That's almost as important as building up your asset base, because the risk of if something happens to you in your early 20s is obviously catastrophic, as opposed to, you know, if you get a critical illness or you can't work from age 66, it's not really going to impact you if you're retiring the next year. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we do with clients. We build a financial plan for you, you know, and effectively it's not rocket science. It's just working with you and ticking off the boxes in terms of fundamentals, building up a roadmap for you to say, look, you know, this is where you are at the moment. This is where you want to get to. What do we need to do? And put some metrics on that to say, okay, well, if you want £1,000 in retirement a month over and above the state pension, over and above, you know, you've got an investment property, you know, you're going to have to be paying in, you know, X amount a month. And is that achievable? Is that affordable? What do you have to do on a personal level? So, you know, classic example we have is kind of bank staff or nursing staff. It's a case of, well, you know, if you are permanent, you know, just do an extra bank shift, or 2 bank shifts a month, and that extra £300 or something like that, you know, pay that into a pension or pay that into your NHS pension as a top up. And that's just chipping away at this ultimate end goal, where you want to get to the financial security, where you want to be able to say, look, you know, I want to be able to retire at 60 as opposed to 65. A lot of the examples, a lot of Tendayi's clients and things like that, you know, myself included, we kind of were handicapped. When we came from, you know, I came from South Africa, you guys probably Zimbabwe, Ghana, Nigeria. It's, you know, when we got off the boat, or the proverbial boat in this country, you know, our asset bases were absolutely decimated. When you're dividing what you had by 20 or 20, when I moved over, it was 18. You know, I had a friend move over at the peak in the rand was about 24, 25. So whatever you did have is kind of cut in half or cut in a third, and you effectively have to start over in this country. And it's about, you know, it's almost look at it as a clean slate from a financial point of view, you know, getting those building blocks in place. And as I said, the building blocks can be anything, but what you want to do is just make sure they're all working for you. So, you know, Tendayi works with clients putting together kind of, if clients have a preference for kind of buy-to-let strategies, you know, looking at doing that, building up property portfolios. We work with clients, you know, who have property portfolios, but we're just looking at getting diversification. What investments can we look at making alongside that to again, just give you that extra bow in your quiver, you know, when you retire. If you've got 10 arrows when you hit 65, as opposed to just one arrow that if it goes amiss, you know, we're in trouble. So it's all about just building up all of that ammunition effectively to give you a better chance in retirement. The other thing to obviously bear in mind is, you know, if you are fortunate, you got the assets, it's about generational planning. And again, it's part of this roadmap strategies. at some point we're going to hand stuff off to our family. And some clients like to do that earlier. If we can demonstrate that they're absolutely all right, it's, we can give, X amount to the kids to help them on the property ladder, and it won't impact their retirement. So this is all encompassing about, the overall plan, the overall journey, putting a bit of meat on the bones, and making sure you guys have everything you need to get there quicker, securely, and ultimately, as I said, the name of the game is making sure your money is working for you. Whether it's paying in monthly or starting at the right at the beginning, building up assets, or protecting what you do have. It's about making sure you're on the same page and everything's working in the same direction. So yeah, as I say, I think Tendayi is going to jump in now. I don't know if you guys, I'll obviously stay online and we can kind of deal with any questions, I don't know, beforehand or during. I'm happy to do whatever. I'll just leave it to your leaders to ping in.
Okay, I think, Mark, I think we can take 3 questions directed for you, and then Tendayi can come in if that's okay. Is that all right?
That's fine, yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if there's anyone who has a question or would like to know more information. If you can just type on the chat, and then I can pick up the ready.
Thank you so much, my Chaza. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I am just going to try and share my screen. Can you see that? Yes. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thanks, Alan, for that first part. I'm just going to continue onwards from where Alan spoke about. Today, we had been asked to focus on debts and money management, and so I asked Alan to start first, who was talking about thinking about the end game, which is the key.
Sorry to interrupt, Tendayi. Sorry to interrupt. Your voice is a bit faint.
Is it okay?
Or maybe I've not closed your mic here.
All right, is that better? Can you hear me better now?
Slightly better. I'm not sure about others.
Wonder what's happening here. Okay, let me just put the volume up perhaps. And can you hear me better now? Is that still clear? Is that clear?
It is.
It is. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mama. Awesome. Thank you so much for for this opportunity to be here today. And I'm just going to carry on from where Alan set off, who was literally talking about what's your end game? What do you want to achieve at the end? And I was asked to focus about managing debts along the way. So Alan spoke about designing your life plan, gave us some tools that we can use towards building up to that retirement. And I think the lady who asked the last question of, is it better to do an interest only and keep a mortgage on an interest only on a buy-to-let compared to putting it on repayment? As Alan said, at retirement, the end game is you would really want to have as many things that are just giving you money without you needing to pay out as much. So things like debts, when he was looking at what amount you would probably get in a state pension and your other incomes, things like debts literally can only choke you in retirement when you don't really want to be working anymore. You're forced to go out there because Mr. MasterCard wants his money, or there's a big car loan that you have to pay. And so when you allow yourself to always think of what is the end game, what do I want to see at the end of the road, it really does affect the decisions that you make along the way. One of the things that we can't really get away with for most of us who do not have the luxury or the privilege of maybe parents who left us a rich inheritance is that we are starting from scratch. And so to buy your first property, to pay for university fees, you would have needed to incorporate some sort of debt along the way. So one of the things that we do when we do our Understanding Money program is really looking at money in different ways. Alan spoke about a journey that you're on. Most of us understand how to make money. And one of the things that you'll hear even amidst friends, oh, this place is, they're paying a higher rate, a better day rate. Oh, there's people are making money, and we're all very excited about things that will allow us to make money. And even in terms of, Alan was speaking about investments, naturally there's an affinity to get rich quick. It's like, oh my gosh, I can make a lot of money. I want to be on that boat. But there's a whole other journey that if you get it right with your money, it can actually just make the journey a lot smoother. Spending money, how do you spend your money? Is it in alignment with that end game that you want to see? Investing, or how you grow your money, is it in alignment with that? I am going to focus on borrowing money today, protecting money. You are the number one asset. Have you protected yourself? Have you protected the way you work? Many of us here perhaps are nurses. When you go and you start to work on a locum basis, you take out some sort of insurance or indemnity insurance, because you know that actually if I do make a mistake, this is my source of income and I don't need that to stop. So, making sure that you've looked at that. Otherwise, when you neglect those areas, you can lose a lot as well. If your fiance buys you a really expensive engagement ring, you're sure to make sure that on that home insurance, you insure it in case it gets stolen or damaged, because you've actually put your money into it. So that's another element, that as you are going on this journey with your finances, if you imagine yourself driving a car, you have to be shifting these gears. You can't just go in gear one all the way. You can imagine the sound. Some places in life there's steep climbs. Sometimes you have to go down, but there's that ability to navigate the gears depending on what is actually happening in your life. And then ultimately, passing money onwards, which is something that we also, try and help you with. Have you got a will in place? When you set up your life insurances, have you got it in trust? Is it clear who the next person who's going to receive that money is going to be? So these are just some of the gears of working with your finances. But I'm going to concentrate on borrowing money, because this is something that, like I said, very few of us can get away from unless we've been privileged enough to have had a generation before us that has set us up in such a way that we actually don't need to borrow. And one of the keys is really understanding what the different types of facilities of borrowing are, what the pros and cons of using them are, and managing them well. Because ultimately, when you do get into debt of sorts, the key is managing it. And why it's important to manage it, because in the UK, there is a financial passport, I'll call it, called your credit report, that documents your behaviors, that documents your reliability with regards to any borrowings that you have. And it can adversely affect your journey with your finances if you don't get that right. We hear that funny statement saying, oh, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Unfortunately, when you do not manage these credit facilities well, and when I say manage them well, I mean paying things back on time, even paying them back, taking or biting things that you can manage without putting a strain or a stress on you. One of the things that can happen is, the pressure becomes too much and you start to default. And like I said, it feeds into other things. For instance, your car insurance, if you're not going to be paying your car insurance upfronted by the year, if your credit is bad, guess what? Anyone who's going to lend you money on that will charge you a higher rate of interest. So in essence, the little money that you have, you're having to pay a premium for borrowing. The mortgage rates that you can get, somebody else, similar person, same age as you, same born in the same year, on the same day, you both go into the facility to borrow 100,000 towards purchasing your first home. If that credit facility has not been good, or your reputation on that credit passport is not good, you will end up having to pay a higher monthly payment for the same thing that somebody else is doing. And so it's really key to really have a look at these facilities and sort of sense check and say, okay, at any given time, which is the best one that I need to use? Am I getting the best rate? I would say take stock, periodically sit down, have a review with yourself and take stock of, okay, what are my overdrafts that I have? What are the rates of interest that I'm paying on them? What are my credit card facilities? I think it's next month, the amount that you have to pay as a minimum payment is going up on credit cards. Because if you're not careful with the credit cards, at 18 to 22% or 24%, if you're just making your minimum payment on that, you could have that credit card for virtually a lifetime and not be shifting any of that debt off. So taking stock and saying, is there a way I can get a better interest rate on this debt that I'm currently paying? And hire purchase. We need a car, you need to go to work and you've had an unreliable car, which you've been forking so much money into. But, the beautiful thing is we're in a nation where these credit facilities are available. So they say, yeah, come, buy a car now, come and get your TV up front. If you don't pay it in the first 6 months, we'll give it interest free to pay it off. After that, a big amount of interest will actually go onto the debt. Payday loans, when you start going to payday loans, it's almost like very desperate. You've probably messed up a few relationships that your auntie and uncle, you can't go to them and say, auntie, can I borrow 50 pounds or 100 pounds anymore? Because, for instance, if you're borrowing, say, 100 pounds on a payday loan, you probably have to give back 150. So these are almost really expensive ways of taking money out. And if those are your last resorts, I would urge you to say, hold on, go back and take stock and say, what has got me to this place where now I have to only approach payday loans? There's personal loans that the bank offers, business loans. In the climate that we've been in, the government has been offering loads of business loans, and people are like, oh, I'll just take the money. But what is that loan for? Is that feeding into your ultimate plan? Secured loans, which are secured against your property, are another way of borrowing on property. And you would typically maybe go for that if perhaps your circumstances from when you took your original mortgage, maybe when your credit was quite good, has become worse for whatever reason, and your mainstream bank can't necessarily give you that money at that nice low rate of interest anymore. There are people who will say, okay, you know what, if you ever fail to pay your mortgage, obviously your main bank has the first right when they auction the property. We're going to come in and say, right, we will go second dibs. We're prepared to actually lend you some money with us having a stake on the house that you own. And they would charge you, say, a higher rate of interest for that. Bridging loans, which some people use, to buy property at auctions, do them up, and then go and, take a mortgage after that, which is like it's a temporary mortgage, which is quite a high interest for about a year or so, that allows you to do what you need to do to get a property sorted out. And then we have our student loans, which most students have had, whether you studied now, even nursing, you have to take a student loan. So these are the different types of debts facilities that you will probably come across in your day-to-day living, and managing them and understanding them and taking stock of where you are is key. So I mentioned why this is so important. I have a workbook that I put together that talks about borrowing quite extensively. I mean, it's an understanding money workbook where it gives someone an opportunity just to sit down with yourself and actually look at how is this impacting and affecting my life. Because debt is one of those things, when out of control, it can cause one sleepless nights. There are people who have known to, decide to end their lives because it just became overwhelming. And I mentioned the credit score. That's one of the areas that you can be affected. The other area that's really affected is relationships. you could find yourself in a position where you are having to work all the hours God gives, to try and cover up or pay off things. If you are in a married or relationship, if you have gotten involved in certain things that your spouse doesn't know about, and then behind their back you've had to take out debts, and then they find out that, oh my gosh, we have all this mountain of debt that we need to clear. That's something, again, that really affects and impacts people, and their well-being, that can also be impacted adversely, when debt is out of control. Your career prospects, there's some careers that you simply will not be able to go into if you have defaults or CCJs, and it might be something that you really want to get into, but it could cause you to fail at that point of entry. And so it becomes increasingly important, particularly as children of God, to understand that actually, you know what, whilst we live in this world, in a system where there is credit facilities, there is debt, and we do need it to function, it is something that we don't want to persistently be in. The word of God says that the debtor is slave to the lender. So debt does enslave you. And oftentimes, knowing when you're biting off more than you can chew is really important. And just stepping back and saying, hold on, should I do this? Sense checking, is this something really for me? Because sometimes in our desperation to make it, in our desperation, to keep up with the Joneses, we enter into agreements that we end up having to pay prices that are way too costly. Some people naturally, get into debt because of circumstances. One of the disadvantages that we have as being, first generation living in diaspora is many of us still have families abroad that you have to support as well. Just this period of COVID, where, say, in Zimbabwe, you were hearing extortionate amounts of money that needed to be paid just to get oxygen for your loved one. So some people find themselves getting into debt because of circumstances like that. It wasn't planned. You were managing your budget very nicely, but because you're maybe trying to sustain the life of a loved one, you end up being ensnared in these debt chains. I was looking at some of the quotes. Romans 13 verse 8 says, "Owe nothing to anyone except to love one another, for he who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law." Proverbs 22 verse 7 says, "The rich rules over the poor and the borrower becomes the lender's slave." Psalms 37:21, "The wicked borrows and does not pay back, but the righteous is gracious and gives." So this whole concept of these systems that are created to say, do you pay back? Do you pay back on time? Are actually in alignment with the word of God as well. So sometimes we find ourselves so ensnared in places where we're like, how do we get out of this? And I would always say, just, face the truth. Once you take your paperwork out, get your credit report out. The word of God again says no condemnation when you're in Christ. Just have a look and say, you know what, where am I at? Let me face the reality of the situation that I'm in at now. Then I can start to make a way out. Yeah. So one of the things that might, I won't say offend one, or is often a harsh reality, is understanding that one's relationship with money is actually not that great. There's a workbook, a little book that I put together when I was going to speak at a couples retreat a few years ago. And I started to think about the different types of relationships that are there. The Bible says money answereth all things. Yeah. So the fact that it answers, it means that it has a way of communicating. Even to date, when someone walks into a place, we have so much respect for those people who are high standing in society. Oh, she's very wealthy, she's very rich, or they've made a lot of money. Because money speaks, it speaks for you in places. If you're not well, you go to the doctor. We're talking about retiring in Africa. With your money, you get a chance of making it. But if you don't, you know, it's like, oh, okay, can you step aside, please? Let those who have the money come forth. So your relationship with money is a key one to actually have a look and be introspective and say, okay, you know what? This one night stand relationship with money is a relationship, as it says on there, you know. A one night stand is you walk into a place, or nowadays it's so easy with being online. You know, there was a time I was seeing the Amazon parcels just coming in, and it's like, hold on a minute, you know, I see something, I think I like it, boom, you bought it, you know. The next day you're thinking, why on earth did I get this? You quickly get tempted to just get everything without planning and preparing. Alan was talking about when you put your end game of what do I actually want to see, if it becomes so key that, you know what, by 60, I am slowing down from work and I'm going to spend more time with my grandkids, you know, imparting wisdom, knowledge, you know, having fun times with them, then you will address this relationship style and say, you know what, this does me no good, you know, because it looks like the money that I am earning, I don't even see where it's going, you know, and I'm constantly chasing my tail, trying to get out of debt, trying to get out of situations, and it looks like it's not enough. When you decide to cut off some of those connections, you'll begin to see, whoa, actually, I have a lot of money, and start clearing up those debts that are, you know, costing you the most first. Um, I say seemingly faithful but deceitful relationship. Again, you know, the times that we're in now, there are so many stories I have heard of people who have put their hard-earned savings onto these get-rich-quick scams, which are just waiting to pounce on you. You know, you've done well, you've managed to save well, but now there's that bit or element of greed of, oh, I can make 60%. I can make, there's no such thing as a free lunch, you know. If it's too good to be true, it usually is. And that can actually set you back. Someone was sharing with me the other day how they had these crypto traders say, look, do you want to invest in cryptocurrency? We'll do it for you. Yes, while you fold your hands, someone will come and say, let me work your money for you. Come on, you know? And before they knew it, 6,000 pounds down, and I don't know, because they had given all their information out, they actually managed to get into their an overdraft approval of over 3 grand on an overdraft. So can you imagine this debt now that you have, maybe because you were gullible, you believed someone, they were so sincere, the website was so clear, and you thought this is a legitimate way of, you know, I understand, I'm hearing crypto, I also want to get involved. And you know, so now how painful it is, you know, thank goodness they have a good career, they have good ability to pay back, but many people find themselves then stuck financially because of that deceitful relationship with money that you have, you know, unfaithful, uncommitted type of relationship. I would say like a gambler, some can come, some can go. You know, you win, you lose, you know. And again, that can often land you in big trouble, you know, if you don't fess up and own up to that. And then I talked about faithful, committed relationship that's fruitful, you know, where you have a sound mind, you're calm about things, and you know, you plan, you're not in a rush, you have the patience to say, you know what, okay, I'm going to do this next, then I'm going to do this next. You don't really necessarily need to look at what everybody else is doing, but understand what is working for you, what works for you. um, you know, Alan was talking about risks and investments. So sometimes I look at people and some of the ventures or things they get into, and I say, this is so high risk. Do they understand how risky this is? Nothing to do with their own personal appetite for risk, but because they've heard and their sister did it and they made a lot of money. You know, you have to do your own due diligence yourself, you know. So how do I come out of debt or manage my money better, or the debts that I have better? Including your things like your mortgage. You know, you can clear it off. The sooner you get rid of it, you're free, isn't it? If you can able to make overpayments on it, you come out and you're free. He that the sun sets free is free indeed, and that's what we want, that freedom. You know, I say AAA: assess, analyze, and address. You know, just take time to assess, what is my position now? You know, look at what you want for your end game. Are you taking actions and making behaviors that are in alignment with that end game? You know, write down the interest rates on what you're getting on everything. Is there a way of improving them? Can you get a lower rate? Is there a way of juggling things? How long have you had these credit cards for? Are you making any dents on them? You know, or are you really giving them money? Ask for a strategy. You know, what impact is it actually having on your relationships? You know, I remember years ago where, you know, I was working really hard, and psychologically, it's we work hard, we want our kids to have the best things. And my daughter said to me, Mom, all I want is I just want to play with you. I just want you to play with me. And I thought, wow, her desire and her need was so simple. Sometimes we are breaking our backs, you know, taking all sorts of financial commitments in a desire to please our loved ones, when all they really want is our time. And in so getting into those commitments, we are actually moving away from the very thing that they want, you know, so we're losing twice. And then call whoever you need to call to, you know. So once you've understood your position, you've faced the reality, if you need to call the bank and say, you know what, I am really struggling. One of the wonderful things about this time of coronavirus is there's been a lot of I know people who cleared their debts off, you know, when the banks were doing 0% on debts or freezing interest. They took advantage of that moment to actually say, you know what, I'm going to make sure that I come out of this. It was a window of opportunity, that get out of debt, clear that off, pay that off, you know, and don't get yourself ensnared again, you know. If at any point, because of your circumstances, perhaps you've lost your job, and what you could afford before you can't afford, honestly, pick up the phone and speak to the credit facility that you owe money to. Try and come up with some sort of agreement, some sort of arrangement. Do not bury your head in the sand. One of the things that happens is, you know, there's an element of shame, of the fact that, oh, I've failed. You know, you can't put your head up amongst others, but actually, you know, pick up that phone and speak to someone. There are organizations like Step Change who are geared specifically to help, you know, with debts, who can advise you on whether to take out debt management plans, make some arrangements or agreements. But again, look at that end game. I speak to a lot of people who set up businesses, and I know when you're setting up a business initially, it's tough, you know, it's hard. But if you're going into an area that's quite lucrative, perhaps in 2, 3 years, you know, you're actually out of that place, and now you want to get credit facilities. And for the sake of £5,000 or £10,000, you managed to get you went bankrupt. Guess what, you're going to be tied out of a lot of financial institutions for a good 6 years, you know. So really looking at, where are your goals, where are you at now, is one of those things that one really must do. So in a nutshell, you know, there's no situation that you can't come out of. There's always a way out for you. You know, seek guidance, prepared to make some necessary changes, be prepared to take necessary steps and implement those changes that are necessary. You can do this. You know, last year we had our Understanding Money conference, where the theme was breaking free from the matrix. And you know, a matrix is something called, I class it as a womb, or a place that is quite good in that it protects you within there, but actually the financial system that we operate in can actually snare you as well, as I've been describing during this conversation, you know. And there are 4 types of limitations that affect you and impact you when you are in that matrix. The first one is practical limitations. You know, perhaps, you know, you've run up all your debts, everything is to the hilt, your credit card is maxed out, you know, there's no leeway, no one will lend anything to you, your salary is limited, you know. So you might be facing practical limits. You know, address them, write them down. What are your practical limits? Perhaps, you know what, you got into this mess and you didn't tell your spouse, and actually now the thought of telling them, it's like, my gosh, how do I tell them that I've missed the mortgage payment, which is one of the worst payments that you can afford to miss, because it does dent your credit score, badly. But it is a limit that you have. Write it down. The other limitation is your mindset limitations. When you're in a bad headspace about your position and the reality of what you face, you can't see a way out. You can't think clearly. The best thing to do is start to have the mind that was of Christ, the mind of possibilities, of solutions, of, come on, there has to be a way out of where I am right now. What is it? Speak to others, get guidance, get rid of your embarrassment about where where you are right now, and speak to somebody to get counsel. It says in the counsel of many, there are ways of life, of prosperity that come. So the other limitation that one can find themselves in this matrix is spiritual limitations. We are children of God, and you have to understand that, yeah, although there are practical things that we face, we wrestle not flesh and blood. There are powers, principalities, those people who are receiving your interest rates, or the payments that you're paying. It's actually a line of business for them. They profit. Someone is profiting from you remaining in that place of high debt. So you have to start to invoke, and even as you pray, that there is a spiritual realm where God can actually start to move and shake some things and make ways where there seem to be no way. So you have to invite God into some of those limits. And the fourth limitation that we face is the knowledge limitation, which hopefully today we've started to touch upon it. And when people come and get bespoke advice, that's when we can really go into detail with, okay, you know what, you've got this money here. Okay, this is how much you can actually borrow if that's what you want for your retirement. This is, when knowledge is power. The Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. So get knowledge and get understanding of, okay, with where I am now, what can I do? How can I move forward? How can I come out of this space? And I'm just going to share a scripture that really came to mind yesterday when I was talking to my chaza, which is Psalm 126. And, debt or limitations financially is a sort of captivity, it's a kind of bondage, isn't it? And when we were having this conversation, she mentioned that it's very easy. There are times in life you can find yourself there. Globally, we're experiencing this pandemic. Perhaps you've lost your job. Perhaps your spouse has lost your job. Perhaps you've lost your loved one, and they were the main breadwinner, and you've got these 3 kids at home, and you hadn't got around to doing a life insurance yet. So actually, you're in this place of, what are we gonna do next? It's tight. But there's a hope in the word of God that says that when the Lord brought back the captives to Zion, we were like those men who dreamed. Our mouths were filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. Then it was said amongst the nations that the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, and we are filled with joy. That is a message of hope that I just want to leave with somebody today, to say, what? There's no situation that is permanent. As long as you're prepared to do the work, as long as you're prepared to step out and take the steps, God is with you. God is for you. He is able to restore, the joy, to restore the peace back into your life, that when you go to bed and you're like, you're not thinking of, oh my gosh, do I have to call Barclaycard now, and I have to call NatWest, and, of all that's going on. This too shall pass. But just do the steps that you need to take, and start to assess with practicality of, where are you now? Take stock of your position. Thank you very much.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Tendayi. I'm not going to give vote of thanks because I've assigned somebody to do that. But before we go on to that, are there any questions? Maybe some people may want to ask some questions and Tendayi can address. I think we'll give about 10 minutes to address that. Any questions, please, on the floor? Any questions?
Mazvita pamusoro ini ndinobva ndakambira. Naitendai mwanangu wakanga uripiko 20 years ago, mazino apera kusanwa. Saka inonokera Colgate. Thank you so much. Inini ndine mubvunzo. Ndambobvunza hanzva dzedu ichataura. Can I repeat it? Yekuti I am now a pensioner.
Oh, yes.
Is it possible for me to go on the property ladder as a first time buyer? Thank you.
Yes, but I would have to look at your personal circumstances in terms of, is it affordable? Chamuru kuda kuachiva kuti muruda kusira nhaka kuti ndakasira vana vangu izvi here, or what is it that you want to achieve? Is it affordable? Because again, remember where I was saying kuti, with a mortgage, if you don't keep up your payments on a mortgage, the property can be repossessed. Yeah. So if you've built up your savings and you have enough and it's a comfortable payment in relation to the pension that you are getting, then I would say fine. However, you know, if you're a pension, I would say these are makore, tinoti makore enyasha, you know, mortgage yekuti inenge yakakunginga pauro mangwana ukakonewa kuibhadhara kana kuti wakunida kubatanidza mazishift uchishanda kutamba nevazukuru. The question is it necessary? You know, are there other ways of you know, because we must appreciate the journey that we've each come on. Some people came here when they were 16, some people came when they were 40, some people came when they were 50, you know, so you crossed over. You came out of Egypt into the wilderness years, we want to call them. And I understand the desire to always leave an inheritance for those who are coming after. There are other ways you can do that. I don't know whether that answers you, but technically, pane zvinhu zvinokwanisa kuitika. Kana chingori chido chenyu, I had a mortgage. I did a mortgage for someone the other day. They were 65. They got their mortgage, and but they had right to buy on a property. So, you know, the government put in a whole lot. It was a small, that the rent that they were going to pay ongoing with that council property was going to be more than, you know, the mortgage. It was a no-brainer. Let's do it, you know. So those and then
Thank you so much.
I think we have a question there. Okay, I think it's the same question. And tell us more about mortgages for over 60s where the houses are advertised cheaper.
Okay. So we don't help you look for houses. The search of the houses is your responsibility. And all we do is once you found a property that you want, you come to us with your circumstances and we can then help you to find the money to buy it based on your circumstances, your credit, your pension or retirement income streams that you have. But yeah, they are available. And yeah.
Hey, any other questions? Okay, so far hapana. Okay.
Ndodzoka futi. Ndokumbirira mutisiro mavhesi amataura tiri maslow writers
Okay.
Mutisiro per chat, maybe you could put them on the chat or whatever.
Okay, I had asked Mbuya Samfonda kuti vaimbe. Mbuya Samfonda mukangotimbira 2 verses and then we hand over to Mainda Gurwa to vote of thanks. Mashita Mbuya Samfonda.
Mashita, muri kundinzwa here?
Ehe.
Ndiri kuimba hymn 246. Zvakanaka kuva pano muruje kurwake Jesu, kune kuziva nzira yake, nzira yekudenga. Ngatifambe murujeko, murujeko rwake Jesu, ngatifambe zvakanaka murujeko rwake. Zvakanaka kuva pano, kudzidziswa nekudzidza nekukura misi yese murujeko rwake. Ngatifambe murujeko, murujeko rwake Jesu, ngatifambe zvakanaka murujeko rwake.
Mazvita mbuya Samfonda. Tokumbira umaenda gurwa. Mazvita.
Thank you, my Chasa. It is a privilege to offer thanks on this platform. Let me start by acknowledging my Mudambanuki, my Wedu, Pastor Mudambanuki in absentia, my Sibanda, all the RRW executive members, finance team, all the RRW members, and everyone who is on this platform. Not forgetting, the biggest acknowledgement is to our guest speakers, Tendayi and Alan. Today, we want to thank the Lord for making this presentation a success. And we see by his blessings and grace that we've been able to make it successful. Thank you, everyone who has managed to attend this, as we have found it very fruitful. To our guest speakers, Tendayi and Alan, a big thank you for sparing your time. We appreciate every moment. We are very grateful as it has enlightened our thoughts and minds on our financial management. Like Alan was saying, he was enlightening us on our tools towards our retirements. And this has given us a reflection on our management as well, on our planning for finances. But like some of us, we are over 50s. I don't know whether we are late or we still have an opportunity. It might be small amounts, like he was saying, but you have to be realistic to see whether it's achievable or affordable. Tendayi, thank you so much for your topic on borrowing and managing debts and all issues about insurances. Things like leaving our wills in place, the different types of debts people incur, and thank you for your strategies on how to manage and taking stock of our debts, the daily interest rates we have to look into. We've been so inspired by your great knowledge and all the advices you have given to us. We will one day call you back if we need to. Thank you so much. I give you back this time, my Chaza.
Mazvita mainda gurwa. Tendayi, thank you so much. I'm not going to say much, but Ruku send a message. We are going to do our appreciation. I'll be in touch with you after this. But I'll hand over now. Kuna mai Mudambanuki kuti muti tiromuna matowe kuvhara this session. And then we will ask London members, please, to stay behind so that we can finish the session. Mai Mudambanuki tipewo mnamatowe kutenda Mwari this beautiful session that we've had.
Thank you, Mazvita Maichaza, Kundipangua. Thank you, hi, Sisi Tendayi, my dear friend, dear daughter at times. Thank you so much for the knowledge. You were right to say, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. Tinobondera nekuti tenge tisina ruzivo. But thank you. Gogokawa says, is it too late? Where were you, Tendayi, 20 years ago? But it's never too late. Nekuti our thoughts are not God's thoughts and our ways neither his. So Mwari vane mukana vadikani taitirwa zvakanaka nhasi. Ndazofarira ndifunga mbuya akawamazoinzwa imwe vhesi yashewa naTendai. Zvinoita Tendai anokudza zvemari but anenge achiisa soko raMwari. So kureva kuti haana kumborasika. Ende Mwari vakataura zvekare in his word kuti ndarama nesirivha ndezvaMwari. So hachimbori chitema to be rich. Hachisi chitema kuacquire what you can acquire in this life. NdiMwari vanenge vatendera. Psalms 20, is it 26 that we read? Nas, I think I want 26. Yandiitira zvakanaka. So toda kusvika panguva yekungonamata kuti Mwari, we want to be filled with laughter. We've been possibly in bondages. Maybe we came here because we didn't know. So maybe it was quite, because Satan, what he does is so quick to lure us. Pamwe takangona, you can get this before we knew it. But ndakutenda Mwari, timbosvika panguva yekunamata ndakumbira unamata, but umwe nomwe imbokumbira kuti let you be set free from this captivity, from this spirit of death. Death irimwe kungotitera zvokuti pamwe vana vedu vakangoona tichiakwaya mazikumota, they didn't even understand. So they think maybe that's the ideal to have a big car, but do they know that there's a debt behind it, there's a higher purchase behind it. So toda kunamata kuti ngatisunungurwe. We want to have that laughter. Nekuti Mwari vakauya to set us free. And we are free indeed. There is no condemnation to those who are in Christ. Tendai ataura. So ngatimbosvike panguva yekunamata. Tumbobvekeserwa pfungwa zvimwe zvacho. It's in our mindset. What you can do, the potential, do we realize our potential, what we can do nenyaya dzemari, so that you can also impact kune vana vedu. Before we know it, sure, noita generation inenge yakutotora madestiny nomubva kuvana vedu nevana vedu nekuti they didn't know. So ngatimbosvika panguva yese yekunamata ndozonamata pekupedzisira, but timbonamata, let's meet and advise kutenda Mwari nechidzidzo chatapiwa, kutenda Mwari nesoko tatosunungurwa nekuti taakuzviziva. We are not going to perish. Hatichangobondere, hatichangoti chauya padoorstep wakunyora zvausingazivi. Mwari wedengu achitibasa. Let us